Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Is God real? Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds. Unchurched, going way back to the beginning. So I was chatting with one of my C12 buddies. That's that Christian mastermind group I'm a part of. And he reminded me that it was in the summertime when they had originally kind of challenged me to do something with this podcast in this kind of unchurched theme. And it was in the summer. I went back and looked at my notes, and it was 6 years ago, if you can believe it. 6 years. It was 2019, summer of 2019. I kind of just felt called to do it. And I'll be honest, I chickened out. I told myself I was going to do it, but I didn't do it, if that makes sense. It wasn't until October, it was around my birthday month there, where we finally released this episode that you're going to hear here today. So I went back and listened to it myself. We had Pastor Johnny, who's one of our insider members, and he just shared an amazing story about his transformation of, not wanting anything to do with the church to literally being a full-time pastor. Of a fascinating church of how God moved in his life. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, he's been on a couple times over the years, and just a great guy, a great speaker, great testimonial to just how powerful God is and how he works in our lives many times when we don't expect it. So I hope you enjoy this one. This was really where everything kicked off for Unchurched, and just very grateful. I'm super grateful for you, for all you listeners. I love the emails. I love the support. I love the questions. I love even getting challenged. I'm not always right, clearly. I love all of it. And I personally love just being able to document this journey, something that I can go back and listen to like I did with this episode, and things that ultimately I can share with my kids and hopefully even grandkids as they go through challenges and have the same struggles and questions that I did and still do on things like, is God real? So I hope you enjoy this one. It's a long one, but definitely well worth it. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Enjoy episode 1 of Unchurched. Is God real?
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds, and special guest,
Johnny Kelly.
Pastor Johnny Kelly.
Right. I love your intro. It's like you're a wrestler.
A wrestler. This is going to be like a wrestling match here today. So depending on you're watching this on YouTube or listening via the podcast, you might have already seen the title, and maybe you're scratching your head wondering, what in the heck are the Salt Strong bros doing? The title of this is called Salt Strong Unchurched. This is the very first episode, and let me just tell you why we're doing this and what our goal with this is. So first and foremost, over the last year, we've done quite a few podcasts, usually about 2 a week. And every once in a while, I sprinkle in something personal. I talked a lot about my bouts with depression and anxiety and alcohol. Talked about just some things that have happened in life, some suffering, some pain, some times that I felt lost, that I felt just confused and unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. And what's crazy, after all the podcasts, and this whole thing started off as a fishing podcast, the ones that get the most feedback and the ones that like just give me the goosebumps from some of the emails I've received have been about the personal stuff. And a lot of people have asked, Joe, I want to know more about this journey. How did you go from like being in the lowest lows where I was afraid to go into Publix? I was suffering from that bad of anxiety attacks, and I could not see the end in sight. I felt like there was no hope. I felt like I was alone. I was scared to tell people. And I've received messages now from complete strangers that, just mind-blowing stuff of how some of these messages have changed their life. And so I've thought a lot about this. I've prayed about it. I've talked to members like you. Johnny's one of our insider members. And I kept hearing this whole Salt Strong Unchurched. And here's what unchurched means. Unchurched represents around 65 to 70% of America. So you ain't alone if you're unchurched. And what that means is you probably grew up going to church, or maybe you've been in the past and you're not going now for whatever reason. However, you kind of have that itch to go, but either you think it's boring, and we're going to talk about that because a lot of churches are completely boring. No offense, Pastor.
No, they are.
We're going to talk about just the intimidation factor of why a lot of people don't attend church, because it can be intimidating. And sometimes you walk into a church and they're already in this 12-week-long lesson and you just feel lost and confused and you feel like you don't belong there. And me looking back, just so you know my history, I did go to church every week as a kid. And quite honestly, they weren't very fond memories. They were memories to me of like having to wear clothes I did not want to wear. They were memories of me putting on really uncomfortable shoes. They were memories of me all of a sudden kind of being forced to be an acolyte as a young kid and having to put those thick polyester robes on and sweating up there.
I just picture you rolling out on Sunday morning in like your brown corduroys.
That was me, dude. And I grew up in Florida. Like, you're hot. Like, you don't want to put long pants on and dress up, and especially the whole acolyte thing. I did not enjoy that. And I remember just sweating up there, like trying to not knock over the candles or the wine and the bread. And so as I got older, and let's just take college, for instance, I finally, graduate high school. I go off to college in Atlanta, Georgia. And for me, it was like, finally, I don't have to go to church anymore. And that's me being candid. And I want this entire series to be just candid and unfiltered, honest, because I think that's what's missing in a lot of churches and a lot of conversations, right?
For sure. I mean, people respond to people being real and people being honest, and they respond to people talking to you like a normal person. Watch movies and, yes, there is a place to sort of get away from it all. And we watch Avengers or whatever, but the best movies that we remember throughout all of our history are ones that just tell stories from real life. Yeah. You look at like Forrest Gump or something like that. They're these stories of, that might be a little far-fetched, but they're stories of people, and they're stories of people that are broken and messed up and just sort of what they go through as they walk through life. And I think that's what people need to hear when it comes to the idea of church and God, is that they need to know that there is, that we're people, that it's sort of normal, and that we can be, not sort of normal, it is normal. It's just a part of who we are, and what I believe and what I think, and it guides sort of how I operate. But in the end, I'm still a person, just like everybody watching and listening to this. So,
and you have an amazing story we're going to talk about here in a little bit, where, I think at some point in your life, you might have felt a little bit lost and broken and didn't really have that hope, of, hey, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? And then we're going to address the whole God thing. Because I think the main goal of this is to address a lot of those questions that most of us have. And even I find myself talking to my wife, we moved from Texas to Atlanta, then Tampa, now Winter Haven, and we've always been trying to find a good church community, and it's been really tough. And a lot of the questions my wife has is like, why can't they talk about this? Why can't they tell, hard-hitting real stories? And that's what we want to focus on.
And it's a reasonable question. It's a reasonable question, I think, that more churches should dive into, because it's, if it's the questions that the people they want to, if a church wants people to come, and we want people to learn about God and stuff like that, then shouldn't we be answering the questions that they have that are completely reasonable?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely reasonable question to ask, how do I know if God's real?
Yeah.
Like, that's a reasonable question, and you're not bad for asking it.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe it's good to ask those kind of questions. It's smart. It helps you learn, helps you grow. I believe that God wants people to follow after him that are doing it because they want to, because they believe it, not because they're forced to, or they feel some obligation to be holy or something like that, but to be normal people that choose to follow after him. And in order to do that, it's a decision, and it's a decision that has to come from an understanding and saying, hey, you know what, I believe this because I believe it.
Yep.
Not because it was told to me, but this is what I believe. And despite what some people may think, God is cool with you anywhere on the journey. Like if you don't know if you believe it yet, that's cool. Yeah. Like that's cool. It's the point isn't to say you have to be here or you're evil or you're bad, but it's that it's asking those questions and going, hey, you know what? I want to learn. I want to get better. I want to have a deeper understanding of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and church can be fun, right? I think
yes.
You mentioned earlier, a lot of people think of it, including me, for many, many, many years, it was more of an obligation. It was something I checked off the box. I felt a little better going. And so many of us, because church can be completely boring, right? And you don't get much out of it. They'll pass by 100 or maybe 200 churches to go to an NFL game, right? Like, here in Winter Haven, we used to go to Tampa Bay Bucks games back in the day. We had season tickets. We drive an hour and a half with traffic, to sit there. And now, of course, you have to go through x-ray machines and all this traffic and long lines and $8 beers and cover your kids' ears because so many people are cursing. And yet we'll do all that stuff and then sit through the traffic and we won't go to church because NFL football is entertaining. It's fun. Yep. And yet we think of church as like, all right, kind of have to go. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's a big goal of this pot. And I know you do that at your church too.
Yeah.
Is just make it fun, make it where people are excited to come back, where they can hear stories, they can feel emotion, right?
Yeah, I want church to be, I know for us, for my church, that we have, our services are around an hour, so it's not like 3 hours or whatever. It's about an hour. You have some good music, a great band, fun lesson. But it also, in the midst of being funny and fun, it still is a lesson or a message that is going to hopefully help answer your questions, or even better yet, lead to more questions so that you can walk further in this journey. Without questions, you don't learn. There's a reason why you raise your hand in class. You have to learn, and you want to grow, and you don't necessarily grow by just somebody just telling you everything, but by figuring it out, by figuring out what you believe, why you believe it. You'll never be as strong in who you are as a person until you know what you believe and you know why you believe it, ever. I mean, you'll never be as strong as you are in that moment. And that's the journey. That's the journey.
I love it. Yeah. And so we're going to talk all about that in 1 second. I wrote down some notes because there's still people probably scratching their heads saying, all right, what is this? So here's what I wrote down quite some time ago on what Salt Strong Unchurched is. And it was meeting the unchurched, the 65 to 70% of Americans who were not going, but yet they feel like they're lost and they feel like they want to belong and want to be a part of something. It's meeting them where they are with honest and unfiltered answers to the big questions that we all have about faith in general. And here are the ultimate goals, and then we'll get into your story. So I think for the people that are feeling despair, that are feeling discouraged, that are feeling depressed, I mean, all the things that I personally went through and are just looking for hope. I think hope is a word that at the end of this, we hope people feel like, you know what, there is hope. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one struggling with all these stuff, whether it be addictions or bad relationships, etc. And then just that unfulfillment. I feel like hearing the messages and knowing what I went through, at my lowest lows, I felt so unfulfilled, meaning I felt like I had no purpose, I had no mission. Why was I put here on this earth? And I did not like God at the time of my life. I was not going to church, and those were my lowest lows. And then finally, just that confusion and clarity. And what I had to do when I was at that lowest low, and this point, I was drinking every night because it was my only friend. My wife was working crazy hours in a hospital. I hardly saw her. I had zero relationship with her. I had no friends because I was traveling all the time in a new city in Houston, and Houston's not no offense to my Houston friends, but
I used to live out there.
yeah, it's a tough place to live, especially from Florida. And I did not really want to be there. And so I drank every night. I was overweight. That was when the anxiety attacks and stuff were at all-time high, depression. And what I started doing was I started looking at people I looked up to, people like my parents, who was like, you know what, man, how can I be like them? And what was interesting, the one common thread that all these people had, meaning they had great marriages, no one's perfect. And I think that's another misconception about Christians. Oh, they're all perfect. God, they're all broken. They all have complete screwed up lives for the most part, right?
You go completely. I mean, there's not a single person in history that isn't messed up.
Yes, but
everybody.
The difference is what I found with all those people that truly had faith, that truly had a relationship with God and believed with all of their heart, they all seem to let this stuff just kind of slide off their backs. Like even my parents, who, my youngest brother in a wheelchair, I don't know how it breaks up more families than anything else, and yet it brought them closer together. Like all these things, and a lot of my parents' friends, all of them had that one theme in common, is when tough times happen, and it's going to happen to everyone. I mean, from death to depressing times. I mean, there's always suffering going on in our lives, but they all had that one theme in common, which was a relationship with God. And so let's go into that. Yeah. And I'd love to hear your story. You shared it with me one time a while back, and I remember getting goosebumps just hearing about the whole journey. And I want you to tell, one, because I think a lot of people are going to relate to it in a certain way. And two, I think it brings pastors in general down from a pedestal or from,
please don't put me on a pedestal.
But you know what I'm saying?
The last place I want to be.
But when you told me that, you became real to me. And I could relate to you, and which is why I wanted you to be the first guest on this podcast.
Yeah, my story. I grew up as a pastor's kid. My dad is a lifelong kids pastor, so he's a minister to kids. Him and my mom working together, ministering to kids. You'll never meet somebody that loves families more than my dad and my mom, and so I grew up with that. It's been cool. Now here we are years and years later, and I've hired him. He's now the kids pastor for me at my church where I pastor at. And but I grew up in the church my whole life. But I also grew up in the church that a lot of us, if we did go to church as kids, probably grew up in, which was a sort of a myopic view, a very the wrong view of what God really wanted the church to be.
Did you think it was boring like I did?
I thought it was boring, but it was also legalistic. It was many times condemning. You lived in fear of doing the wrong thing and missing heaven because whatever, you get in a car wreck on the way home and you had just done a sin, and you lived in this sort of weird stage of God loves me, but I'm scared, and so I grew up in that and lived in the church my whole life. Grew up doing that, and we moved from Illinois. I grew up in Texas. Go Cowboys! And sorry for your Bucks this weekend. But I grew up in Texas, and but my dad's job and work had taken us to a church in Illinois, and we moved away from Illinois, heading into my junior year of high school. So I was 16, and we moved to Lakeland, where I live now.
Polk
County. We moved to Lakeland when I was 16, and my dad went to work at another church there in Lakeland. And when we did, I discovered that the school I'd been at in Illinois was I was really far ahead. And so we moved here at the beginning of my junior year, and I went to school for 2 months and met with the guidance counselor, and they go, you have enough credits to graduate. They're like, you can stick around for a couple years. I said, no. And so I graduated. I was done with school, and I was 16 years old. And my parents looked at me and they said, we know it's early. We weren't expecting anything. And so if you want to just sort of experience life, get a job or whatever for the next couple of years, you can. And so a week later, I joined a rock and roll band.
You were 16.
Yeah, okay. I was 16, almost 17 when I joined the band. and I joined a rock and roll band playing bass. And it was a Christian band. I met some guys at other Christian concerts. I was really, I was a big punk rock kid.
Yeah.
So I had a big mohawk at different times.
Seriously, so this is like a punk Christian band?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I've had many piercings all over, and you know, the band was sponsored by a tattoo parlor, and so it was fun, you know, being a Christian band, but thanking a tattoo parlor in our albums. But we. So I joined a rock band, and we started playing concerts, and it was really cool. It was fun, and did that for a couple years, and the band ended up breaking up, and in that moment, I wasn't mad at God. I think that's sort of a distinction that people have, because a lot of people feel like they've walked away. Maybe they grew up in the church and they walked away and they just don't know how to get back. And I walked away. I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry. I joined another band, and it wasn't a Christian band. It was just a rock and roll band. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't mad. I just sort of said, you know what? I'm just going to experience life outside of that.
When you say walked away, you mean you stopped going to church?
Stopped going to church.
Okay.
Stopped going to church. I stopped really thinking about it.
Okay.
I just sort of, I wasn't mad at God. I wasn't hurt. It isn't to say that I haven't had hurts that came, you know, from people at churches and things like that. And I think it's an important distinction. A lot of times we equate God with the people that hurt us at a church, and those are two totally different things. But I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry. And I sort of said, you know what, I'm just going to sort of experience life otherwise. And I started doing that. And where it led me was not a great place. You know, you cut to a few years later, a couple bands later, and I remember I was doing a lot of drugs, doing a lot of drinking. I was on tour. And on this particular tour, it was the last tour. One night we were in Indianapolis, and we played a set at a club there in Indianapolis. And afterwards, I don't remember anything until the next morning when the band found me.
Whoa.
They found me behind the dumpster of the club that we played at the night before. They'd been looking for me all night because I didn't come back to the hotel. And I just gotten drunk or high or both. And I don't really know what all happened, but that's where they found me. And I remember just going, man, life sucks right now. It just did. It just wasn't fun. You know, and I was touring. I was in a rock and roll band, and I was, you know, people were cheering and loving the music, and I'm you know, getting to drink and get high for free. You know, for a lot of people that might be their dream.
And were you still in the late teens at this point?
No. At this point, I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
And so this is a few years later. You know, and I remember we were on that tour. It was the same tour, and about a week later, part of the tour fell apart. And so we had 2 weeks of the tour that just sort of fell apart. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And we could have sort of tried to keep going, but we had basically a 2-week gap in the middle of it was a 3-month tour. We had a 2-week gap in the middle of it. And we were in Illinois somewhere by chance. And so we called the record label, and we're like, well, just fly us home for 2 weeks, and we'll come back and pick up the tour bus, and we'll head on to the next show. And as we're pulling into the airport in Chicago, I decided, and it was for no apparent reason, I called the record label and said, hey, instead of getting me a plane flight, get me a car. I lived an hour and a half from here for years. I went to high school. It's where I went to church.
Yeah.
It's where I really made my first ever decision to really live for God.
But your family wasn't there. Okay.
Nobody's there.
Okay.
They're all in Florida at the time. And so I'm in Illinois, and so they rent me a car, and I get in the car and I drive, and I'm not even really thinking much about it. And I drive, and I end up in Rockford, Illinois, where I'd grown up. And as I'm pulling into town, I'm like, I distinctly remember pulling in and seeing the sign, like, for Rockford. I go, yeah, Rockford. What the crap am I doing here? Like, why did I come here? I haven't been here in years. I am not the same. I do not go to church. I'm not living for God. I'm not the same guy I was. And there are people I still knew there. Obviously, I'd grown up there, but I didn't know what to do. And I basically pulled into town and holed up in a hotel and didn't call anybody for 2 days. Didn't let anybody know I was there. Didn't do any of that stuff. I was just in this random town, basically.
And you felt like
I felt completely alone. I felt like
why did you do it in the first place?
I don't know.
Okay.
It really, honestly, I don't. The best thing I can tell you, and it might not be an answer that satisfies everybody, but it was God led me to that moment. He watched me hit the bottom. He watched me at rock bottom, and he just sort of said, "You know what? I'm going to throw a lifeline to Johnny. I'm gonna, and I truly believe this, that he sort of said, you know what? Let's make a couple of these weeks of tours go away, and let's see if he goes back home." And that's what I did. And it was, I was at bottom. I was alone, and I went to the closest place that had ever been home to me, which was Rockford, Illinois. And I went there, and for about 2 weeks, about 2 days, I didn't say anything to anybody. And finally, I ran into a guy who was one of the pastors at the church I had grown up with. And this is a guy that I had known when he was interning at the church. He's just a couple years older than me. And he's a pastor there now, or it was then. And we ran into each other. And it was just sort of out of the blue. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I didn't really get into everything. I said, "Well, I just sort of decided to come into town and see people and stuff like that." He's like, "Well, I haven't heard that you were in town. I haven't seen you." I go, "Well, I haven't seen anybody yet."
You're the first person.
And I'm like, "You're the first one." And he's like, "Well," and he didn't even really question. I think he realized that I was pretty vulnerable at that moment. Like I felt alone. I felt alone. And it was through my own doing. I sort of walked away from everything that would have made me not feel alone. And he said, "Where are you staying?" I told him, and he said, No, you're staying at my house with me and my wife. And so I went and slept on their couch. And it just so happened that they were having sort of a week of church services at the church. And so in order for me to see anybody or hang out with anybody, I had to go to church.
Yeah.
And I went, and I wasn't uncomfortable. I'd grown up in it. So it was an easy, sport coat and corduroy pants to slip on. It was an easy walk in there. But I didn't change who I was. And I walked in and sat there, and I saw who was my youth pastor, the person who was my youth pastor growing up. And her name was Jeannie Mayo. That was her name. And I grew up with Jeannie, and she was my youth pastor. And it was a huge youth group, a massive youth group, one of the biggest ones in the nation. And she saw me and just gave me a big hug and said, let's go to lunch tomorrow. I said, okay. And she told me where to meet her. And we got there, and I walked in first. And as she's walking up, and I go, they said, "How many?" And I go, 2 smoking, please. And I made her go sit in the smoking section, and I sat there smoking while I'm talking to her. And never said anything, just loved on me. And she said, "Come to church tonight. Come to church tonight. I want you to sit by me." And that might not seem like a big deal, but it was a big deal. It's a massive church, and there's 1,000 people in this room, and she made all of her pastors move down so I could sit on the front row next to her. So not so that I was like to be a symbol of anything, but throughout the night and throughout the rest of the week, every single time I was around, everybody just loved me. And they just showed me grace and said, "Hey, we love you." They didn't try to change me, because that shouldn't be the goal of church, to change you. The goal of church should be to show you God, what He's like, and hopefully you want to change yourself to be better. And that's really what happened. And so for a week, God showed me grace in a way I had never seen. Showed me love, and it changed my life. I decided that, it's time to start following after God again. Met up with the band the next week and sort of said, this is my last tour. I'm done. I'm going to finish up this tour, and I'm done.
Wow.
And I've been in full-time ministry ever since. So whatever, going on 18, 19 years now. I'm older than I look. And that's what led to the life of me being a pastor and being in ministry was people not trying to change me, but instead just sort of saying, "Hey, God loves you. We love you right where you're at. Here's grace. You're broken. We're broken. We've just got a God that loves us in the midst of it, and He wants to love you too."
So, that's awesome, by the way. So I'm curious because I think a lot of people really struggle with, I heard from God. And a lot of people will say, what does that even mean? And I've heard people who, we had Kelly who was on the podcast talking about her son, where, I mean, she was seeing messages from, her son as an angel or God, like on billboards, like crazy stuff, like literally speaking to her. The same billboards that she'd seen a million times were saying stuff that was normally not on there, like almost like unexplainable, and then visions. And just the same reason I'm doing this podcast, I am trying not to, I don't want to be doing this, by the way. Like, it is uncomfortable, right? It's not something that we ever set out to do. And yet every time I reject it and say, oh, I'm going to put it off, like I feel that tug. Does that make sense? Yeah. But I haven't seen like God come down or in a dream and Jesus up in front of my bed saying, here's what you need to do. But I feel like I keep getting pointed in this direction, and it's tough to explain to someone, but I can feel it in my body. So when you're going through all this, did you have how do you go from being in a rock band, I guess is the unbelievable part, and smoking and drinking and drugs, to all of a sudden saying, you know what, my path, my purpose, my mission is now to be a pastor?
It was never a, Monty Python and the Holy Grail moment where the paper clouds opened and God spoke and talked to me. I never had that. It was simply people who were living a life for God, showed me his love. It was honestly just me making the decision to go, you know what, God, you've given me a certain set of gifts, the ability to talk, the ability to communicate, the ability to understand. And you've also, in a weird way, given me a history and a past that is checkered, that is messed up, that is broken, that lets me understand where people that are broken in this world are coming from. I understand what it's like to need, a substance or want a substance. I understand what it's like to feel completely and utterly alone. And so because of that, I think God speaking to me was more just general guidance, just sort of going, oh, wait, here's the door that's opening. And every door that I have chosen before has led to brokenness. It's led to hurt. It's led to pain. It's led to depression, feeling completely alone. Because that's really honestly where it came down to. As I felt alone, all that came from I felt completely by myself, and because I had chosen to walk away and not live the life that God wanted me to, and so because of that, I was alone, and he opened the door and said, hey, here's a place where you're not alone. Here's people that want to do life with you. And they're not trying to make you be different or better. They want you to be different. They want you to be better, not because they think that you're horrible, but because they see that you're sad. They see that you're hurting. They see that you're broken. And they know that the hope that they feel in their heart is something that would change that in your life. Yeah. And that's really what it came down to. And so it wasn't a moment. There was none of that. It was seriously just people being there for me, loving me. It's how I try to be as a pastor. When somebody's hurting or needs something, hey, I'm there for them. Yeah. I'll make phone calls. I'll say, hey, I'll talk. I'll do anything like that. But it all comes down to just being able to say, you know what, I'm there for you, because that's what changed my life, was somebody saying, hey, I love you. I'm here for you. And by the way, the reason I'm here for you is because God changed me, and he made me a person that wants to be there for you. And so it's really sort of the way that went down. Love it. Do you mind sharing? There's another story you told me about weight. You were overweight at some point, because a lot of people have struggled. I was a big boy. I was a big boy. I struggled my whole life with weight. And so at my highest, I couldn't tell you my highest, because I sort of got depressed and quit weighing myself. Yeah. I know I hit like 310-ish. I know. And you're not a super tall guy, no offense. No, I'm like 5'10", 5'11". Yeah, no, I was a big guy. And it's so I'd always struggled with it. I'd never been able to lose my weight. And this is years after all of the story I just said. And I was youth pastoring. I was a youth pastor with teenagers and stuff down in Miami. I ended up there after a few years. I youth pastored in New Mexico for a while, and then I was in Miami. And I was down in Miami, and my pastor decided he wanted to do a series of messages that he was going to call, the title of the series was going to be called Get Fit. It was the idea of like spiritually
aimed at you.
And, no, it was aimed at himself. We were all a little big on that staff, you know, a bunch of biggins, and I, you know, big boned. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I was big boned, husky. And I, you know, it was the idea of the series was just to like, hey, help you get fit spiritually, like be able to like, you know, get to a place where you were more healthy spiritually. And, but we decided to do something fun as the pastoral staff. And so this was right when The Biggest Loser, remember that TV show?
Oh yeah.
It was huge at the moment. And this was, you know, quite a few years ago. And it was a newer show. It had only been out for like a year or two, and everybody watched it. Yeah. I mean, it was just massive shows, probably a little, you know, no pun intended. It was a massive show. Everybody wanted to watch it. And so we, decided to do a Biggest Loser contest between the pastors for the whole series of sermons. So it was a month or 5 weeks, I think. And we would weigh in every Sunday morning at the pulpit during church, which is motivation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I decided to, I had bad knees. I've had surgery on both my knees. And so running wasn't really in the cards for me. And so one of the kids in my youth group, her dad was a manager of a giant bicycle shop in Miami, and like rode bicycles. And I had started trying to ride a bike, and all I had was like a full suspension mountain bike. And if you're like with shocks on both sides, and which they're hard to ride anyways, and they're built for one specific purpose, and it's not riding the streets of Miami when you're 320 pounds. I can't imagine what it looked like, this thing sort of bouncing down the road. And so I went to his shop, and he hooked me up with a road bike, and I started cycling, and I fell in love with it. So I started biking, and I started losing weight, and I lost a lot of weight over the course of the next few months, and was able to sort of get fit. In that journey, I decided to do something a little different. A group of pastors had done it before, and I was going to do it, which was to try and get my teenagers excited about making a difference in the world. And thought, well, what could I use to do that? And the thing I thought was, what about bicycling? You know, the idea of doing something makes a difference. That if you want to make a difference in the world, like nobody's ever changed the world for the better, like sitting on their couch eating Funyuns. Like, you don't ever change the world like that. You gotta get out and do something.
It's disappointing.
Yeah, I know. I love Funyuns. Salty goodness. But you know, you have to get a little uncomfortable if you want to make a difference in the world. You know, I mean, you got uncomfortable when you started Salt Strong. I mean, you've talked about that many times. You know, for a year, you guys were like, and probably still at moments.
This morning before this was uncomfortable. I wanted to call you and cancel.
Yeah,
like, this is
it's you know, and so nobody ever changes the world unless they get a little uncomfortable. I mean, nobody ever. I mean, you got to do something that takes you out of your comfort zone. And so I was like, I'm going to cycle. I'm going to do this. And I wanted to teach the teenagers, like, hey, you can make a difference in the world. And so I started cycling and filming like videos similar to what you guys do with Salt Strong or other like YouTubers. And this was way years before there were YouTubers. Yeah. But I was putting the videos on YouTube, and they were these just videos of me training, getting ready. They were funny, you know. I had, but they would also have like a lesson about how you can get out and make a difference in the world. Like I had a video of me like shaving my legs, because when you ride a bike a long time, you just see the guys, they shave their legs. I tried waxing them on a video. Oh my gosh. That was really dumb. And it was painful. But it was very smooth though. So I started doing that, and then decided to do a ride, and I was going to ride from the border of Georgia all the way down A1A, Beachfront Avenue, to Miami. And and it was 500 miles. I was going to do it in 5 days. So 100 miles a day.
God.
And I was going to make a video blog every single day doing it. And I did, and it went really well. And beyond my church, other churches started watching the videos and talking about it. And I got asked to go and speak at some of their churches.
It's like, how much weight did you lose?
I had lost, well, at that point, it wasn't my smallest. I probably had lost 60 pounds at that point. Wow. I was probably like 250-ish. And so the next year I did another bike tour like that, another little 5-day tour. That time it was from like Panama City to Fort Myers, down the other coast.
Yeah.
And during that time, I felt God. I just sort of felt like, wait a minute, there's something bigger here, because other churches were following, other people that just weren't even part of churches were watching these videos, and they were messaging me going, man, you've really motivated me to lose weight, but you've also motivated me to get out and make a difference in the community, in the world. That changing the world is not about changing the other side of the world. It's about changing your world. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about changing where you live and just doing something that helps other people, even if you're in a not great place. When I started that journey, I was just starting to lose weight. I was not in a great place mentally. I felt defeated by my weight. And it ended up getting to a place where I was seeing people start to change things and do stuff differently. And that's what led to me starting the ministry. I left the church and I started a ministry called Bike for the Light. And so that was sort of the journey that led me to that place, and decided to sort of make this bike journey something a lot bigger than just my youth group or my church, a lot bigger than 5 days a year, and decided to do it full time. So I sold everything I owned.
Wow.
I bought the crappiest little RV that I could have afforded. It was a 1986 Toyota Dolphin.
Yes.
It was.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Oh man, no. There's a reason. It had the those old Toyota trucks, the little 4-cylinder trucks.
Yeah. That
was the truck front end, and this giant fiberglass rear end on it called a Dolphin. And I don't know why they called it a Dolphin. It was brown and barely moved. Like seriously, it'd be like calling your Indy car like a porpoise or like a turtle. Like, it was just the oddest thing in the world. It was called the Dolphin. And I got a guy who was going to drive the RV for me. I was going to live in it, and we'd go around the country, and I would bicycle from church to church, telling my story and just talking about how God wants to use them to make a difference. And so that's what happened. That's how I started that journey into that area of life and biking and doing all that stuff. And so, sold everything I owned. And then I jumped in this RV, and the guy who was going to drive the RV for me had been he was now an adult, but he had been a part of my youth group when I youth pastored in New Mexico. So I was going to drive to New Mexico, pick him up, and we were going to drive to San Francisco to start the first tour. I jumped in the RV, drove to New Mexico. I was excited, I was pumped.
Yeah, new chapter.
A new chapter in life. During the process of starting it, I met my wife, but we were just dating at the time. So I didn't have kids. I didn't have a wife. I'm in my late 20s, and I'm like, I sold everything I own. Everything I own is in this crappy RV, and I'm going down the road, and the Toyota Dolphin. We named it Gertie. We put it on the front of it, Gerty, Gertie. I decided I was going to ride my bicycle across the country for the next 9 months. Sort of zigzagging. It wasn't like a straight shot. A lot of people do those like, hey, we're going to do it as quick as we can. I wasn't doing that. I was going to sort of zigzag, go all over the country. Okay. And so I was excited, even though I was nervous. I was uncomfortable. I had a few $100s in my bank account from selling everything, and that was it. That was it. I had enough money in gas to get me to California to start. And I was just sort of believing that, okay, God, you're going to handle this. You're going to I feel like you wanted me to do this, so I'm going to take the step. And so I pick him up in New Mexico, and we're excited. Okay, we're driving. And so we get down the road. We're heading towards California now. And we drive 2 hours, and we hear boom. Gertie. What did you do? And we pull over to the side of the road, and the bumper on the back of the RV had broken off, partially. Like, it had broken off to where it was dragging on the ground, which was sort of funny, like, by itself. Like, the idea of, like, the bumper broke and it's dragging out of nowhere. But the problem with that is that we had a hitch that was, the hitch that we had was mounted on the bumper. And the hitch had a bike mount on it. And so I had 4 bicycles hanging. All 4 of my bicycles that I was going to ride on this tour were hanging on the back of that bumper. So when it broke and it drug all 4 bicycles down the highway. And so it destroyed all 8 wheels, both wheels on all 4 bikes.
Like done.
Like done. Like some of them were like tacoed, like folded in half.
Wow.
But all of them were like ground flat on one side. Like they weren't fixable in any way. And it broke a few other things, but the big deal was the wheels. And I'm sitting there, and I remember standing on the side of the highway going, I maybe have enough money in the bank to buy one set of like cheap, bad, not good wheels, because wheels for road bikes are expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I might have like money for one. And I said, but then I don't have any gas money. And I remember standing on the side of the highway out in the middle of the like high desert in New Mexico going, God, is this it? Am I done? I felt like you wanted me to do this. I quit my job. I sold everything I own. It's all in a junky RV, and I'm in the middle of the desert, and I'm done. And about that time, my mom oddly called me, and she said, "Hey, I want you to read a few verses from the Bible," and it was in Jeremiah chapter 1, and in Jeremiah chapter 1, basically Jeremiah, God has called him to go do something, to go tell some people about him. God has said, "Hey, Jeremiah, I want you to go tell people about me." Not totally dissimilar from what I was doing.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah felt like he was too young, like he didn't have enough knowledge, like he didn't understand enough, like he wasn't ready. You know, he felt like a lot of us feel like I'm not good enough. And that's the way I felt at that moment. And in the first chapter of Jeremiah, God basically says, Jeremiah, just go do what I told you to do. I've got it handled. Like, I'm going to take care of you. And so in that moment on the side of the highway, I went, all right, God, we've got this. Like, I had this sort of, like, you know, like that second wind, like when you're like, all right, you know, I have faith that you're going to handle this. We're going to do it. So we picked up all 4 bicycles and put them in the RV. We picked up the bumper and put it in the RV, and we started driving again. And at this point, we're almost more excited than we were before it happened, because we're like, God's going to do something cool.
Just because this verse.
Just because of this simple verse that just sort of went, hey, I've got it handled.
And did your mom know that?
No, she didn't know what was going on. She just sort of said, I want you to hear this.
Wow.
And it was just sort of out of the blue. Like talking about hearing from God, like it doesn't always come in a giant booming voice. Sometimes it's your mom calling you and saying, I have a Bible verse for you. That's sort of what can happen. And so I got in RV, and we're excited. We're going on the road. And about 2 hours later, we're pumped. We're like, God's going to do something cool. This is going to be awesome. We're going to do something different. And all of a sudden, the transmission in Gertie started slipping.
No
the
way.
Dolphins, like, it started sounding like a dolphin. And so, I remember we hobbled into, I don't remember the name of the town, but a little town in Arizona. And we got there.
So you're still a long way from San Fran.
Long way from San Francisco. And this is on Wednesday night. And my first service is Sunday morning in San Francisco.
Okay.
And so Wednesday night, and we pull in, and I remember that night going, okay, I'm still going to keep this energy from this verse. Like, God, I know you're going to do something cool. This isn't a big deal. There's just some gunk in that transmission. I'm believing it. And I walked in that next morning because we parked and slept overnight in the parking lot of this transmission shop. And the next morning walked in, first thing, said, all right, flush it and fill it. And they go, what? And they go, flush the transmission and fill it. There's some gunk in there. It's causing it to slip. And they went, all right. And they take it back. And about 30 minutes later, they say, Mr. Kelly, could you come back here? Which is like is never good.
Yeah.
Like
we want you to see something.
We want you to see something. There's never been a mechanic that walked back. You see how pristine this is? I just want you to see how good your engine is. I walk back there and they're like, you see that right there? And I go, you mean all that shiny stuff? And they're like, yeah, that's metal and flakes in your transmission pan. And I go, oh. And they go, yeah, this transmission's shot. And I go, so you can't flush it and fill it? And they go, no, man, you need a new transmission. And I go, all right. Well, what's that mean? And they go, well, and they said to me, they said, Johnny, there are 2 transmissions in the whole country that are available that fit, only 2 that are available for sale that fit your RV right now. And I go, okay. And they go, so what we would do is just rebuild yours instead. We could rebuild yours. And I go, well, how long would that take? And they go, we can probably have you out of here at the end of the closing on Saturday. Okay. Which would basically mean I wouldn't make my first service, the place that I really felt God was leading me to go to. And I said, well, give me a minute. Let me go walk around. And I'm sitting there and I'm walking around this parking lot and I'm going, first off, I don't have enough money. Now, I could have called my parents or called some friends and be like, loan me some money, like help me do this so I can fix this. And I remember just walking around this parking lot going, God, I don't have any wheels to ride the bicycle. I don't have a vehicle to live in, let alone get me to the place where I'm going to start. And this feeling of I'm not good enough, depression, like everything I do is a screw up. Like honestly, it's what it felt like, and it overcame me. And I sat down in this parking lot in Arizona, and I opened up my Bible, and I opened back up to Jeremiah chapter 1 again, and I read it again. Where God said, don't worry about it. I got it handled. And I walked into that transmission shop and I go, flush it and fill it. And they looked at me like I was insane. They go, you're nuts. Like, what are you doing? And I said, no, just flush it, get the gunk out, get all the metal shavings out and fill it up with fresh fluid for me. And they go, we can't let you do that. And I go, I'll sign whatever. And they made me sign papers saying I wouldn't sue them or whatever. And we hit the road at a top speed of 4 miles an hour.
You were that guy.
We couldn't go any faster. So we couldn't take the highway the rest of the way. So we took back roads from somewhere in the middle of Arizona all the way to San Francisco. Except once we got into California, we had to take the Grapevine. If you've ever been to California, there's a giant mountain out of LA heading up over the mountains, and we had to take the highway. And we were literally going up this thing doing 7 miles. I could have walked quicker than Gertie was going, and I did not make anybody in LA mad. Or everybody. I'm sure they were talking about me on the news that night.
Yeah, some idiot. Instagram, otherwise you would have been all over.
Oh man, I would have been all over it. Who's this idiot? And so I pulled in to the parking lot of the church Saturday night, late. And I had to speak the next morning. And so
you made it, barely.
I made it, barely. And I got there, and the pastor of the church heard what had been going on, and he goes, I want you to tell the story of your wheels, your bicycle wheels. And I didn't really want to do that, because I'm like, I don't want this to be about me. I want this to be about how they can make a difference in the world. Yeah. And but he was the one who had me speaking, and so I said, okay, I'll share real quick. And so I went up at the beginning of my message, and I held up one of the wheels. And I said, this is what happened. Our thing broke, the wheels got messed up, but you know what? It's no big deal. God's got it handled, and he got me here. Let's go. And that's all I said. Literally, it was 10 seconds.
And you had no bike at this point.
I had 4 bikes, but no wheels.
No working bikes.
I had really uncomfortable seats is what I had. And so I spoke, and I did my message. At the end of the message, I'm outside by the RV, and I'm talking to different people from the church. They're just thanking me for coming and stuff like that. And as I'm talking to them, this guy walks up, and he's carrying 2 bicycle wheels. And he walks up and says, Johnny, I want you to have these. And I go, wow, thank you. And I go, these are awesome. I'm like, thank you so much. And I'm looking, these are really, really awesome. What, do you know what you just gave me? And he goes, yeah. He had this big, dumb, goofy grin on his face. Like, yeah. And I go, these are Mavic Cosmic Carbon Tubular wheels, which means absolutely nothing to most everybody. This is a $4,300 set of bicycle wheels.
Whoa.
An insane set of bicycle wheels. No, they're used, but they're insane. And I go, these are the same kind that Lance Armstrong, and this is pre-Lance getting in trouble for everything. But these are like the same kind that these are like Tour de France wheels. And he goes, yeah, those are Robbie Ventura's wheels. And I go, you mean they're the same kind of wheels that Robbie Ventura rides? And he goes, no, those were Robbie Ventura's wheels.
Wow.
And I went, Robbie Ventura is the guy who rides with Lance. He's the guy who's rode with Lance for like 3 of his Tour de France when he's on his team, on the U.S. Postal Service team. And he goes, yeah. And I go, he doesn't ride anymore. And he's the guy who does the color commentary on TV for the Tour de France now. Like if you watch the Tour de France, he's the guy who's talking.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah. I go, these were his wheels? And he goes, yeah. I go, so these wheels? He goes, yeah, those wheels rode in the Tour de France.
No
and I
way.
went, what? And he's like, a few months ago, I went to a Live Strong event and they had a auction. And one of the auction items was Robbie Ventura's bike. And it's hanging on the wall in my office. And he had gone home after church and pulled the wheels off of it and brought them back for me. And as I'm thanking him, another guy walks up and says, hey, Johnny, I want to take you to the bike shop and I want to get you some stuff. I go, all right. And so he takes me to a bike shop and we walk in and there's like a row of wheels. And he said, let's get you some wheels. I'm going to buy you 2 sets of wheels today. Wow. And I went, okay. And they went from like most expensive to cheapest. And I wanted the most expensive ones because that's what everybody wants. You know, nobody chooses like the John boat, you know. everybody
Toyota
wants
Dolphin.
or the Toyota Dolphin. Yeah. And so but I know he's buying these for me, so I don't pick the most expensive. I went like one down. And he bought me 2 sets of like the next most expensive ones.
Man.
While I'm there, the bike shop owner is there. He hears what's going on. Here's my story. And he says, I want to give you another set of wheels. So he gives me a 3rd set. And he says, and here's a spare one we have laying around. It'll fit your bike. It doesn't match your ones, but just in case you have another break, you have a spare. And I'm like, whoa. And so that afternoon, we went back to the pastor's house and we're hanging out. And the doorbell rings or knocks or whatever. And the guy who had brought me the Robbie Ventura wheels is back at the door. And he's holding another set of wheels. And I go, what the heck? And he says, I gave you those, but I really felt like you needed a good set that weren't so expensive, but that were still really good. And so I went and bought you these. And he holds up the set that was the most expensive ones that I didn't pick.
Yeah.
And he also says, I also got this. And it was a Rubbermaid bin, like a giant, one of those big ones with a lid on it. And he said, this is just some gear you may need. And he'd gone to the bike shop and filled it. I mean, over like to the top, like crammed in there with brake cables and grip tape and all this stuff. If I go a week before, now this story's, I'm getting almost done. A week before, I had been sitting in my dad's living room because I didn't have a house or an apartment or anything. I had a dolphin to live in. And I'm sitting there and I told him, I said, I really wish I had a carbon seat post on my bike. They flex more, means it's more comfortable. Yeah. And they're only like $90, but I couldn't afford it. I just couldn't afford it. And I said, I'll just have to ride on a metal seat post. And I was looking through a magazine. I said, that's the one I wish I could get, but I just can't afford it. A week later, I'm standing in the living room of this pastor's house. And I open up this plastic bin. And sitting on top is the exact seat post that I had pointed out to my dad a week ago. I just said, I wish I had it. 2 days later, I'm in another town. I'm in Bakersfield, California. I think Bakersfield is where I was. Or Visalia, somewhere, one of those other towns. And I haven't been talking about what had been going on with the RV or anything. So I went from 8 wheels that were okay to 11 wheels that were unbelievably good.
Yeah.
I went from having no extra gear to having, I still have some stuff in that Rubbermaid bin that I still haven't used.
Wow.
You know, a decade later, just because there was so much. And 2 days later, I'm in this town and I'm speaking at a youth group with a bunch of teenagers. And at the end of the service, I'm outside and this teenage girl walks up to me and she's crying. And she's like, what you said tonight it changed my heart. I feel like I need to make a difference in the world. I want to go and make a difference to the impoverished nations over in Africa. I want to go make a difference over there. And I said, that's awesome. That's awesome. Praise God. That's cool. And a few minutes later, this grown man walks up to me. He's crying. And I'm like, you weren't in youth group. You're an old dude. And he's crying, and he walks up and he says, that was my daughter. And I've been praying that God would just open up to her and show her that she has something to offer the world. Because everybody has something to offer the world. Everybody does. Yeah. And he says, I own a shop here in town. Do you care? He's like, I can't offer you a lot, but do you care if I give you guys a free oil change? And I'm like, sure. I don't say anything about what the needs are, but I'm like, I'll take an oil change, whatever, you can't, it's not going to make the van run any worse, That night he went home and he read our blog, and there was a post about what had happened to the RV. I didn't say anything at church. I didn't talk about it at all to him or anybody. He read about it. And the next morning we took the Toyota Dolphin over to his shop, and he said, I said, here are the keys. He goes, well, it'll take a few minutes. Let me take it around back. Why don't you guys go grab lunch across the street? And so we go across the street, and I come back after about an hour, and he says, it's not ready yet. Can you bring it back this afternoon? And I go, well, we really need to get on the road.
So now he's like an inconvenience.
Yeah. I'm like, we really need to get on the road. And he looked at me and said, no, Johnny. Johnny, there's only 2 transmissions in the country that'll fit your RV, and one of them's going to be here this afternoon. And so for 3 days, he put us up in his house and fed us. And I'm not joking. He fed us like lobster and steak, which was awesome. And at the end of those 3 days, I go to pick up the RV, and I'm thinking he just changed the transmission. And he hands me what was an invoice, and it was 11 pages long. He had told his guys to do everything. So far as they found a nail in one of my tires. It wasn't leaking, but they found it, so they patched it. They changed all my turn signal bulbs because they were about to go out. They changed my wiper blades, every ounce of fluid, every belt, Freon, everything that they could do in my RV in 3 days while the transmission was getting done. They did everything. 11-page invoice. And I turned to the back, and it said $0 due. And that was the first week of my bicycle tour whenever I decided to do the thing that I really felt God leading me to do, which was scary and nerve-wracking, but it was also just a moment of me going, God, you're real. You wanted me to do something to make a difference, just like he wants all of us. I mean, God made every single one of us. If you're watching this, he made you on purpose. Like, you may feel like you're alone, you may feel depressed, but he made you on purpose. He made you for a purpose. And you might not have found that yet. Or maybe you know what it is and you've just sort of not done it.
Maybe it's scary.
And maybe it's really scary. Maybe it's not living in a Toyota Dolphin, but the best way that I can, because I can't point to like a science book and say, hey, this is why God's real. But I can point to my life and say, I was broken. I was jacked up. And he loved me enough in the middle of that to put my life in the right place. I was stuck on the highway with a broken RV and no bikes.
And no money.
And no money. And he loved me enough to say, no, I'm real. I asked you to do this. I asked you to learn about me and to tell people about me. So when people ask if I believe in God, yes, wholeheartedly. There's absolutely no question in my mind. Because he's been real to me. He's been real in my life. And that might not be the most definitive answer for everybody, but it requires faith. I mean, it requires just sort of saying, hey, I believe. I'm going to have faith. I'm going to believe. And we have faith and believe in things every day that we don't know about. Yep. We do every single day. We have faith that our car is going to start.
This is recording right now.
This is recording right now. We have faith. I have faith that the day I had faith the day I asked my wife to marry me that she would say yes. And And sometimes things don't turn out the way we want to. And that doesn't mean that God's not real. It just means that we live in a broken world. Things are going to be messed up sometimes. But in the midst of it, God's still real. He still loves you. And he still wants you to love him back. That's really what he wants. I mean, there's a reason why throughout the Bible, they call God the Father. Because just like a dad, like you just want your kids to love you, you know? We're all broken. We're all messed up. Like I told you earlier, like I had to ask my 4-year-old for forgiveness this week. Like I had to say I was sorry to my 4-year-old. I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy. Like daddy got aggravated. You know, he got a little loud. He shouldn't have, because I screw up. I mess up. But the thing I want most from him is just him to love me. Like there's even when he messes up, the best thing in the world is when he hugs me and says, I love you. Yep. And it's real. That love is real. And I believe that because I have faith. In the same way that I have faith that God's love for me is real, because I've seen it. I've experienced it.
And from your story and what I've experienced in my life, I feel like every time that there is a tough point, you know, in your case, I mean, a really tough, like lost. I mean, you're literally in the desert, lost with no money. That usually God is preparing you for something big. He's usually preparing you for something that's going to come next, and it's going to test.
Yeah,
You're just going to test your faith. It's going to test your strength.
Yeah. I mean, over the course of the next 9 months, I rode my bicycle about 12,000 miles. But in the course of those 12,000 miles, I spoke at over, I think, 160 churches, and I got to speak to well over 100,000 people about how if they just decided to step out and get a little uncomfortable, that they can make a difference. Yeah. I still get messages, and this was a decade ago. I still get messages. I'm still Facebook friends with some of these people, and they're in their 20s now, but they were teenagers back then, and they messaged me about what they're doing. Some of them are pastors, some of them are lawyers or doctors or mechanics or whatever, but they're making a difference where they are, where God put them, because God made them for a purpose. And that purpose isn't for everybody to be a pastor. That purpose is for everybody to love God and love others the way that God loves them. Yeah. I mean, that's and they're doing that, and I still get to experience that. And so had I quit, that's 100,000 people that I wouldn't have been able to speak life into.
And right now, you wouldn't be on
I wouldn't be doing this right here. I wouldn't be a pastor. You know, I don't know if I'd be a pastor still. I don't know if I would have married my wife. I don't know where life would have gone. But it was just making that step of saying, hey, you know what? I have faith that, God, you're real, because you've been real in my life every other step of the way, and he's taking care of me. I mean, I can look at what we're doing now with our church. I mean, I planted this church. I started this church that I'm at 5 years ago. This week was 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And we've been portable. So we've been setting up and tearing down every week, and we're about to step into a permanent building for the first time. A lot of faith and a lot of moments that are nerve-wracking where I'm like going, okay, God, are you going to handle this? You know, a lot of moving parts to get in there. And every time he just sort of comes through. It's just sort of taking that step to say, okay, God, I'm going to let you, I can't say that you're God and I believe in you and not let you be God. Yeah. I'm going to just let you be God and let you do it. I'm going to do the best I can. And, and he does want to use you to make a difference in the world. He does.
And he doesn't make mistakes.
He doesn't, he doesn't make mistakes right where you're at. He loves you, and you may not know it, but the mistakes that you've made do not negate what God wants to do through you and with you. In fact, if anything, they enhance it. If you look through, the Bible, like every one of them screwed up way bigger than probably anybody that's listening or watching this. You go back to the Old Testament, and King David committed murder so that he could steal a man's wife. Like, most of us haven't done that. So hopefully not. But if you have, I hope you're hearing everything I'm saying. Everybody, Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament of the Bible, was a murderer of Christians. It's what he did, like for sport. He murdered Christians, and he wrote 2/3 of the Bible after God changed him. Like, we're all we are all jacked up. We're people. We're broken. Yeah. And I'm a pastor, and I'm jacked up, and I am broken. And the only good stuff in me comes from God. That's just what it is, and he makes me the person I am. And because, even now, I mean, there are moments, whenever I get aggravated or angry and sort of the me starts breaking through and says, I don't want to listen to you, God. I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's when I yell at my kid or I get mad and cuss at somebody in traffic. Like that's when that happens. The rest of the time, we're being real here, right? Like I'm just, it's just me. But, that's when it happens, is whenever when the old you starts breaking through and God says, no, I love you. Just love me and try your best to live for me the way you can. And that's what I try to do every day.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I had a whole list of things to cover and how God seems to change the script sometimes.
Well, that's next time.
Yeah. So, wow. So I think the big takeaway here, let's just focus on that one chapter in Jeremiah. If for someone watching this, that is exactly what you need to hear. And I didn't even know we were going to go down that route.
I didn't either.
I think that's what someone needs to hear. I think I personally need to hear that as well. And so all we ask, and really the ultimate goal here is to spread this word, is to do more of these. And if you love this, if this made an impact on you, then share it. That's all we ask. Share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And obviously subscribe to us, like us. And then the final piece of this is we're not at church. We're not going to take tithes. This is just something that we are called to do. My ultimate goal with it is to once again inspire people, to give hope. And then finally, to move you along that journey to go find a church.
Yeah.
The church, at the end of the day, it can happen like this. The church was never something that had to happen in a building with a steeple, right? No. And I think that's a big misconception. The church is people. And the one thing you mentioned earlier, I think it's one of the biggest issues facing America is loneliness, right? Mm-hmm. So many of us are lonely. I mean, including people like me who have a wife and kids, but I know there's times when I feel lonely, and it's usually when I've ignored a lot of signs from God. I'm not praying as much. So I would encourage you to find a church. Yep. They're not all created equal. Some are different, but there is a church, I believe, for every person, right? I mean,
there is. Yes. There's every kind of church. If you like traditional music, you're going to find one like that. If you want one that feels more like a rock and roll show, they're out there too. Yep. Or everything in between. And I think so often we equate while the church is there to represent God, past pains or hurts from a church, we go, well, God hurt me. Well, no, people hurt you. And they did it maybe in the name of God, but that's, it's neither here nor there. It's just, God still loves you and he's not the one who hurt you. People might have done it and they might have done it whilst using his name, but I would encourage you to find one. And if you don't find the right one first, check out other ones. But when you find one, here's the biggest point is don't be somebody that is always just jumping around. Find one and dig in. Find one and go, I'm going to give it 3 months. I'm going to give it 6 months and I'm going to hang out and I'm going to see if I can find a community of people. That's for me, one of my favorite parts of Salt Strong. I love learning. I love making fun of him catching catfish. But one of my favorite parts is just community. Yeah. I have a group of buddies and friends that I go fishing with, and I get to talk to and text message and we Facebook or whatever that I get to hang out with. And it's a great community. And in the same way that the church is a great community. And so I would encourage you to find one that you like, or find a place where you go, you know what, I really feel like when you find the one that maybe it's not even necessarily the one that you would go, hey, this is the one I like the best, but it's the one you walk into and you go, I feel like this is where God wants me to be, and it might just be a feeling, it might be a thought. It might be one that you go, and no, I love this place. I want to stay. And you just try one and find it and just go, hey, I'm going to give it 3 months. I'm going to give it 6 months and don't just show up 5 minutes late and leave the second it's over. Try and meet some people. Try to get to know some people because there's some great people that want to get to know you there. Yep. And you'll develop a community and all of a sudden you have somebody that when you're walking through hard times that you can talk to in the same way that I know that you or I get message, even from guys in Salt Strong or other people, we'll get emails or messages going, hey, pray for me. I'm going through a hard time. I need to talk, whatever. That stuff happens, and that's awesome. But in the same way that you'll have somebody that you can talk to within the church that's there for you, right there in your town. Whereas, Salt Strong for a lot of times and for a lot of people is sort of spread out around the world. And so find one that you can dig into and, just find a place to go visit and have a good time,
Yeah. And if someone happens to be in Central Florida, Polk County area.
We meet in Lakeland. My church is Discover Family Church, discoverfamilychurch.com. The website's a little dated. We're redoing it right now, but discoverfamilychurch.com. Meet in North Lakeland, like right off I-4. Super easy to get to. Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Service is a little over an hour. And we have free coffee.
Oh, hello.
With real creamer, none of that powdered garbage.
You need to bring the dolphin back and have that as the centerpiece up front.
I sold that to a guy who is now living in it up in Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's his house. He lives in it. And so, which is terrifying. So that, Discover Family Church, Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. We'd love to have you.
Yep.
If you want any information or Facebook us, you can find us on Facebook. Look up Discover Family Church.
Yep, and we will certainly have him back. The guy has some just really amazing stories, and as you can tell, if you're still here, super relatable. And finally, as I mentioned, we're not asking for money, tithes. We're not a church. We just want to help inspire you, bring you some hope, and just share love out there. That's kind of what you said. And so if you like this, please share it. Let us know. So my personal email, if you made it this far, Joe, Joe at saltstrong.com. So Joe at saltstrong.com. Shoot me an email. Tell me if you liked it. Tell me if there's things that we could have changed, if it was too long, too short, other questions you have, other topics that you want us to cover, and we will do it. My goal is to do this every Sunday, not to replace church, to get the unchurched eventually into church. So even if you're a pastor listening to this, the goal is to not replace church. This is to inspire people and to give them hope that church and having a community of people that just want to love on them. These same people that changed your entire life did nothing but love on you, did not try to change you, did not try to make you feel guilty, did not try to look at you as, oh, you're a sinner and I'm not. They just loved on you. And that's really what a good church community can and will do for you. So that is it. Episode number 1 of Salt Strong Unchurched. Over and out. Thank you, guys. 'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was passed down to me from the days of old. To find us on the water if there was a way. It's been said my papa, he wrote the book on catching big reds and 20-pound snook. I wish I knew all the things he knew today. For he's the reason why we are this way. And he put fish in our soul.